sharing your yes, recording is not on. So if you have any issues with sharing your presentation, please let us know so we can assist with that. For the time being, only presenters are permitted to share screen, but everyone can share the video, and we really would like to see your faces. So please be respectful to our other participants who attend this. And when you speak, please be respectful. Then if you have questions or you want to share your opinion, the chat is open. Anyone is free to share their ideas. And we will have a session for questions, but we really encourage you to chat about the sessions and topics that we have. We're trying to answer the question to the chat and during the time appropriate for that. But in case we are missing something, we will come back to you with your provided email. So I want to thank again everyone for the great participation from yesterday. We had a great exchange. Let's just have a quick overview of what we did. So we heard from the Seabed 2030 project. We had an understanding on what is the project, and we had updates from the Atlantic and Indian Oceans region. We also had an overview of technical aspects on how we map the ocean floor and how the different presentation of phase sizes that they all converge to the goal that Seabed 2030 tries to achieve. And we also saw several methods for data acquisition. How important are transit mapping, crowdsourced bathymetry, satellite derived bathymetry, and how these approaches can help fill the gaps. Then once we collected those data, how it is made available, discoverable to the public for various use. We also talked about how to contribute data, and we'd like to highlight that as a result of the discussion, we already have received one data submission, so really thank you. So for today, we will explore some examples of how the community uses bathymetry data and some updates about national and regional efforts that are also contributing to Seabed 2030. And then following these community updates, we will open the floor for discussions on what's on the horizon and how do we go about accelerating towards 2030. As a reminder, you are encouraged to use the chat to ask questions throughout the session. And with no further ado, I will let my colleague Sheila to guide us and navigate through the first session. Enjoy your day.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Sheila. Right now, I am a data bathymetry apprentice at Lamont since the beginning of summer. I recently graduated from environmental science at TCNY, and so far have learned a lot at Lamont, and I'm very grateful. Today, I will be moderating this first session of our meeting today, and let's just go right ahead. The following presentation is a recording by Bertrand Lobo. He's from the HafenCity University of Hamburg, and it's about a thesis on the analysis and visualization of water column features with an emphasis on hydrothermal plumes and geology in the Indian Ocean. Sounds very interesting, so.
Hello all, in whichever part of the world you are, greetings from Germany. My name is Bertrand Lobo, and today I will be presenting to you a thesis on the analysis and visualization of water column features with an emphasis on hydrothermal plumes and geology in the Indian Ocean. I presented this topic as part of my master thesis for a master's course at HafenCity University in Hamburg, Germany today, and I will be showing you some of the analysis and results that I found. So, diving straight in, I would like to give you a brief background of the project that was conducted in the Indian Ocean, the study area, the tools that were being used for data acquisition, and some of the results and analysis that I found. And to end, I would like to discuss a few points to conclude this thesis. The project that I would be talking to you about today is known as the INDEX project, which is also the Indian Ocean Exploration Project. And this project is basically conducted by the BGR, which is Germany's Federal Ministry for Geosciences and Natural Resources, which is in Hanover, Germany. And the BGR basically owns all the data as well as the tools that are being used in this project. Now, the International Seabed Authority had assigned a license to the BGR, and exploration began in 2016 in the area known as the German Explorations License Area. Now, this area starts in the Western Indian Ocean and consists of massive seafloor sulfides along the Rodriguez Triple Junction, as well as the Central Indian Ridge and the Southeast Indian Ridge. The tool that is being used by the BGR to collect data is known as a HomSide, and I will be telling you shortly exactly what it is. At a point known as the Rodriguez Triple Junction, which is a ridge triple junction point, and the study area for the German licensed area is basically along these two ridges, and the tool that is being used, as I said before, by the BGR is known as the HomSide, which is a multi-beam echolot and side scan depressor. And as you can see in the image below, this HomSide is a deep water sled, which is towed alongside the ship, and it has a variety of sensors on it. For example, potential location SP string, Kongsberg EM2040 dual head multi-beam, an INS and DVL CTD SVP, a magnetometer, a USBL, sensors for redox speed and turbidity, as well as a video camera to click some pictures and videos. This tool is being owned and created by the BGR, still being used in the index projects, and it's very useful in acquiring high resolution mathematical data. So moving straight on to some of the results that I found after processing the data. As you can see, to give you a simple idea of a water column view in the software, this is how a typical water column looks like. An image on the left is a fan view. As you can see, it is an alongside view of the vessel, and the red line is the seabed, and the vertical blue color, as you can see, is the water column. The images on the right, as you can see, the second type of view is known as the stack view. There are two types of stack views, R stack and D stack. R stack is basically stacked lines of data based on range, and D stack is based on depth. Moving on, you will be seeing most of the images in these two views. So now I'd like to show you some of the water column features. As you can see, while I was processing the data, I came across some kind of resolution change in the water columns. As you can see in the images, clearly there is some sort of a gain change or change in color, and I tried to find out why this happened. So I imported raw lines of data into a software known as Sonar Record Viewer that has been developed by Kongsberg, and there I found that at the exact time where this gain change happens, I seen that there was a change in the runtime parameters of the multi-beam, and the TH pulse length, which is also known as the transmitted pulse length, had changed from values like 1286 nanoseconds to 675 nanoseconds. And to confirm this, I imported other lines of data with similar gain changes, and it was certain that it was this TX pulse length that kept changing and fluctuated. Moving on, more water column features that could be seen would be fishes. In the water column, it's always a sight to see and common to see in the water column. As you can see here is two plumes, hydrothermal plumes on the left and right in the image above. And between these hydrothermal venting sites is the presence of a shoal of fish. as hydrothermal bending environments are a rich source of nutrients for fishes. Secondly, also in the image below is also a shoal of fish very close to the seabed. However, here the size of the fish are much larger. The fan mode can be seen on the image below, and can be seen also the chimney of the plume for the same line of data. The second plume that I found can be seen on the image right on top. It's also approximately 38 meters in height, ascending straight into the water column. And you can also see 1 year later, when the data around the same plume was acquired, you can see that the plume was 20 meters in height. So there was a difference of approximately 20 meters within 1 year, but the plume was still active. The third plume that I identified was also in the second field, known as the Kaimana field. And as you can see, the plume here cannot be viewed on the image top left very clearly in the stacked mode, and so I viewed it in the stand mode and the fan mode. And as you can see here, it's also ascending 40 meters in height straight into the water column. Just to give the audience an idea of how an hydrothermal plume actually looks, by the video camera that was acquired by the home side, as you can see, is a plume. On the image on the right is hydrothermal plume, and so the brown part would be the chimney, and as you can see, the black smoke coming out at the end of the chimney in the Indian Ocean. So this is how a typical hydrothermal plume looks like. And moving on, I tried to extract some of the plumes, the data from the plumes, and try to overlay it on the bathymetry in order to understand these environments further. And after processing the data, I got some results. And as you can see on the image on the left, and so as you can see, the images are the same plumes that I found both, but they were extracted. And so the image top left, as you can see, is the first plume, and it's ascending pretty much northeast into the water column, and it's based on the color is based on amplitude values. So I tried to understand this plume environment more, and I used a fan view and overlaid it on the bathymetry. So the image top right is the same plume with a fan mode to see exactly how much it tilts into the water column. The bottom left image is another plume that I tried to zoom in close to these plumes in order to understand these environments. And so it's another plume, again, colored based on amplitude. And the third plume, as you can see in the picture right bottom, is also zoomed in, and it's rather in an area where there's much more steeper morphology. And again, the plumes are colored based on amplitude. So in order to understand based on what's the connection between the environments these plumes are, I tried to visualize the geology in the area, and I basically just optically visualized geology from the bathymetry, and I found very nice results to connect to these hydrothermal environments. So as you can see, the geology of the seafloor in the vicinity of the plume environments, firstly in the image top left, are the presence of sea mounts. These mounts are approximately 15 to 20 meters in height, and they're very close to the venting environments. The image on the top right is basically the presence of fractures. As you can see, there are fractures present in the complete bathymetry throughout the area, lines of rock fractured running parallel to each other. And the third image bottom are the presence of pillow floors in the area. They were very easy to identify from the seafloor bathymetry. Moving on, I also seen a fault cutting profile. Unfortunately, I do not have much data, so I cannot see the entire fault, but it's very obvious of the fault cutting in a particular direction, very close to a hydrothermal venting environment. And the image below is basically fractured rock that are covered by sediments. So due to avalanches in the area, the fractured rock are basically covered up by this avalanche sediment materials. Finally, after getting the results and visualizing the data and analyzing it, I had a few points that I would like to discuss. Firstly is the influence of currents. So based on the way the plumes tilt, and if we connect it to the data that we have over the years, we could know the influence that the current had on it, and where we need to search exactly where these sulfide nodules are. As the plumes are colored in the software based on amplitude, as the amplitude decreases, there's an increase in attenuation. The multi-beam that's connected on the deep towed sled can identify these plumes due to a temperature contrast. So the hot plumes are venting out at approximately 400 degrees Celsius into a cold water environment, which is approximately 2 degrees Celsius. And so this causes a temperature contrast that is identified by the multi-beam. And so you can see these hydrothermal plumes. Based on the geology, the presence of sea mounts and pillow floors indicate that the Indian Ocean has a steep morphology, and the presence of faults and fractures indicate that the Indian Ocean is young and has a complex seafloor. To conclude this thesis, I'd like to say that multi-beam systems that are acquiring bathymetry and water column data are really helpful to understanding hydrothermal venting environments. With this, you can identify hydrothermal plumes, fishes, artifacts, and some features seen in the water column. The extraction of the backscatter reflections in the water column can be overlaid on bathymetry to understand hydrothermal plumes better when they're extracted. Bathymetry collected with water column data can be viewed optically to understand geological interpretations and for geological mapping as well. Finally, I created a comprehensive data processing manual that can be used by professionals, and there's of course much scope for further research in this sector. Coming to an end, I would like to thank everyone for their time. It would be my pleasure to answer any doubts and questions. You could just write me an email at bertrand.lobo@cu hamburg.de, and I would be glad to answer any questions. And yeah, thank you once again, and I wish you all a great time at the virtual event. Bye.
All right, that was Bertrand Lobo from the HafenCity University of Hamburg about water column features in the Indian Ocean. Very interesting. So now moving on to our next presentation, it's gonna be by Knut Hartmann, and he's the Chief Operation Officer of EOMAP. So welcome.
Hello, now it works. I couldn't unmute. Thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Pleasure to be here. I have the pleasure to give you a 10 minutes talk. Actually, I will focus on the data gaps which we saw in the previous talk. So I would share my screen here, give a bit of introduction, and also to again come back to the bigger scale of why we are here together as a community and what we are after. So let's start with a screen share. Screen 2. This should be able to see my screen. Is this correct? So I guess you can. So I will just continue. So the topic is upscaling satellite-derived bathymetry. So the process to map data gaps in the shallow waters. And I will give a couple of explanations of why that is important, what we have done so far, and the approach which we follow here. And before starting, obviously, I would love to introduce you to EOMAP and to who I am actually. So EOMAP is a private-owned company based and headquartered in close to Munich, so in Germany. And we have a couple of other offices all over the globe, really. So we are surrounding really the Atlantic and Indian Ocean regional region here. And by doing so, we have done a lot of projects really all over this region and also the Pacific. What we are doing here is we do data analytics, satellite data analytics for everything which comes to monitoring and mapping our coastal and marine and inland water environments. So our strong focus is on data analytics. We are at the moment, if we count everyone, actually 35 to 40 people. We had a strong increase in personnel and projects due to the COVID times. So we see this is continuously increasing, which is a good sign for us. And we serve multiple organizations, clients, and so on. And you will see a couple of those later on. So let's talk about mapping depths with satellite, which is typically known as satellite-derived bathymetry. A very, very nutshell definition of what satellite-derived bathymetry actually is. It's simply speaking the calculation of a shallow water bathymetry grid using satellite data, most of the time multispectral satellite data. So this kind of process is limited in depth. We can't map the entire seafloor. We are speaking about the shallow water depths. Turbidity is a limitation similar to airborne LiDAR, which you might be used to. I will come back to this point later on. And there's a big beauty of all this approach. Satellite data, as you can see in the background, they cover the entire globe really. So you can access and get imagery from highest latitude of Canada down to the very tropical areas. Processing satellite-derived bathymetric data is super rapid, and you don't have to be on site. So it's an ideal tool to map remote places in the Pacific or somewhere else. And we should not forget about the ability to monitor over time, so we can understand the dynamics of seafloor features. And increasingly of importance, actually, it is needs to be understood that it's also carbon neutral. So let's have a look to the region. And well, to be honest, it's not a region. It's half the globe. So it's massive, and you have so many different environments, different water conditions, and all that really from high latitudes to the tropics and stuff like that. And let's have a closer look. So in the regions, we have the clear waters of the Caribbean. We have some challenging, turbid, often kelp waters in Northeast USA. We have the South America areas. East Africa is part of that, the beautiful Maldives, and so on and so on. Those are all parts of your region. All obviously, as you can simply see in the imagery, comes with different water conditions. Some might be better, some might be less suited for the technology which we are using here. So you see inputs of turbidity here in a river delta, or you see clear waters in here. So the big question is what is the potential, first of all, of satellite-derived bathymetry, because it is obviously linked to water turbidity. This map shows you the average Secchi depths for a couple of selected locations really all over. And the reason why I show you the Secchi depths is that the maximum depth of what we can map with satellite-derived bathymetry is typically above about 1 time Secchi depths. So we see what we can expect, that in very clear waters like the Caribbean, the Pacific, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and all those islands here, we have water clarity which allows to map down between 20 to 30 meters. Where the more turbid the water gets, like in the west coast of Africa or South America, the water is more turbid, and so the coverage of the bathymetric data will be limited. So simply speaking, this shows a lot of potential. So there's a lot of area to be mapped. It will vary. There are areas where this technology will not be able to fill data gaps. Those are not only the deep water areas, but those are also the super turbid waters as you have here in the river Amazonas Delta or in Asia as well. But for a lot of areas, this is a very attractive method. So in the next slides, I will show you a couple of those projects which we have conducted, which at the end also feature and ended up in Seabed 2030. So for several years, actually, we are engaging with the EOMAP Bathymetry project. EOMAP Bathymetry is a European project to map the entire European bathymetric data and make those data accessible in a 100-meter resolution grid. And with a new release, actually, it didn't stop only in Europe, but it also includes a lot of areas in the Caribbean, so the European overseas territories. And I'll just show one of those examples here, which we've mapped for the bathymetry, EOMAP bathymetry project, which again ended up in the EOMAP as well. So let's just go to one of those clear water locations. So one state which we have mapped here is or one region which we have mapped is where the Cayman Islands. And you directly see here the outcome of what we have done with the satellite data. So you see a colorized map. Every color represents a certain depth down to 25 meters or 20 meters here. And that is purely done by satellite data, as you will see later on in the process. And what we have done this for this, and as I mentioned, also for a couple of other countries here, which were now provided to EOMAP. We can zoom in and we see all those nice features like a reef system in here, sandbanks and stuff like that. And we can do another trick. We can actually use another satellite source, which is an active green LiDAR here. Those are the lines which you see here, and verify those grids with another remote measure of measuring depths. And if we do so, we can create plots such as these and come up with a vertical uncertainty statement for those satellite mapped areas. So this was one nice showcase. I mentioned that as said because it was for the EOMAP project, which is part of the GEBCO community anyway. We've also done another actually super nice project in Belize, which was part of our framework contract to the UK Hydrographic office. So we were asked to provide a very dense 2-meter bathymetric data grid for Belize, entire Belize. So another nation was mapped here with the bathymetric data. I would assume, to be honest, I have to check that, but I would assume those data also at the end will end up in Seabed or GEBCO grid. So there's a press release and there's a nice story around that, but this will be too much now. So we are working quite intensively in the Pacific. We're mapping several states over there, which again end up in the Seabed 2030. So the Pacific region will accesses these data at the moment. And I'm just mentioning one of those, which was a satellite-derived bathymetry pilot, which was funded by the Seabed 2030 for Micronesia. And we created these dense grids here, shallow water grids down to 20 meters or so. For all those Micronesian atolls and the surrounding ones as well later on. So I can show various kinds of examples where we've done that all over the globe, but still the question is, okay, this is nice. We can do this here a bit in the Pacific. We can do a lot of stuff in Belize and somewhere else. But how do we deal with this huge area? I mean, this needs some new approaches to fill those data gaps. So the question here, what is required for upscaling all this process? So we are in a lucky position that the European Union co-funds this entire concept, obviously because there's so much interest and so much demand. And we came up with these requirements. So we said, okay, if you want to work on this kind of almost global scale, we can't work with very often publicated kind of methods which rely on local survey data to do some fine-tuning simply because those data do not exist. We also need to reduce all those user interaction within fine-tuning fitting data models. I can't expect this will work for upscaling. And we need a processing system, a cloud-based one, which is capable to process huge amount of data. And of course, those data and all those analytics needs to be based on satellite data archives which exist, which are massive, and where the access to the data is guaranteed. And then you need to deal with a couple of other effects. Actually, I'm just mentioning the water level at this stage here. So water levels needs to be integrated because tides matter. And this is part of the, or has to be part of the SDB process. There are other features like multi-image processing, but this will go into much more detail. But at the end, obviously, all this stuff which is going to be developed needs to be accessible via API or web interface. So this was a challenge which we set ourselves and in those projects here. And we come up with a solution which I show you in a second. So we found answers to most of those questions here. So we are not using empirical approaches, but we use a satellite-derived bathymetry process, which is based on the understanding on the light path rather than just empirical fits. We came up with an automatic way to identify satellite data, harvesting, processing them. All the system works on the Amazon cloud, which gives us access to several thousand cores at the same time, which is massive actually. We have integrated the access to the European Space Agency's Sentinel data at this stage, furthest to come. We are integrating a tidal model or we have integrated a tidal model to all this approach and created the required interfaces. So this is work in progress. We are, I think we are half-time in this project. It's already at a great stage. So what you see here is actually just how it looks like. Let's see what happens. On the left-hand side, you see the user interface on how you simply log in, draw an area, create, push the calculation of the data processing to the system, which is happening in the back end. On the right-hand side, you see how the data look like. You can visualize them in the viewer and obviously download them in all the standard ways which you are used to. So, and well, actually impossible for me to run in every detail and describe on how the system works. So you can just test it on your site. Just go here. If you're interested, you just need to register. Very simple stuff without any charge, obviously. And there's also a free trial button on the top left. So if you click that, you can just test that for free. And my colleague is here for any support needed. And yeah, how good is the data? You might ask this question, obviously. So I'm just showing one slide, which I actually find pretty mind-blowing. So we've just tested the system in one of the most challenging environments in the higher latitude. And the outcome here in the middle represents the colorized depths, which just came out of the system as a fully automatic thing. So you did nothing else than just drawing the area. And we compared this against airborne LiDAR data to the left-hand side. And just by the colors, you obviously see they're pretty similar. And if you just do some tricks and draw transects and stuff like that, you see they align very well. And this actually shows the power of the system and the solution which we came up with. And if you just imagine you're using the interface or the API, which I've shown earlier, just do tasks such as these here, create this bathymetric grid and come up with something which looks so nice like here, even in inaccessible areas. It's a mighty, mighty tool. Still, we are super aware that technology needs to come with understanding on technology and how this needs to be used and applied. So a minimum kind of understanding on the technology and what is happening here is pretty important, not to create the wrong expectations and stuff like that. So for this purpose, actually, we are, for the fourth time, actually, we are holding a conference on SDB, satellite-derived bathymetry. This time it will be back close to Munich location. It's Save the Day is out there already. Agenda is soon to come. As you see some previous speakers in here. It's a super nice event, really. So if you can, just save the date. It will be hybrid, but you will have most fun, really, if you are here on site. And yeah, that's it. So I hope I could show you a bit of what we have done in the past for the project, of how we want to continue and how we want to grow the understanding, the technology on satellite-derived bathymetry. And if you have any questions, I will just copy my email in the chat together with the links which I've shown here. And thank you very much for the chance to present.
Thank you so much. That was very, like, I really like to get some more insight on the satellite derived bathymetry, and the images were like very beautiful. So thank you so much for that great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So also you mentioned questions. There's a questions for you in the chat. So for that person, like, you can email him, or if you just want to answer to through the chat as well, like, that's permitted. Also for anyone else, if you want to ask any questions for any of these presentations, the chat is right there. And in any case, there's also the discussion at the end of all the presentations. So be on the lookout for that. So now we'll go to the following presentation. This is by Lieutenant Commander Telmo Geraldes Dias from the Portuguese Hydrographic Office Data Center. Well, we get some insight about their efforts on contributing to the Seabed 2030 program. Welcome, and go ahead.
All right, good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes. Okay, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present the SEAMAP 2030 project. My name is Telmo Dias, and I work at the Portuguese Hydrographic Institute. So this is the agenda for the presentation. I will start with the vision of the project. And next I will present some of the aspects of the mission. I will explain how data is being collected. And finally, I will describe how this data can be downloaded. So aligned with the Seabed 2030, the Portuguese Hydrographic Office has its own mapping project, SEAMAP 2030. And this project was officially launched in 2017, and its vision is to complete the high-resolution mapping of all the Portuguese maritime spaces by 2030. So here you can see the full dimension of the Portuguese maritime spaces. We have 3 exclusive economic zones and the continental shelf extension claim area. The total area is around 4 million square kilometers, which is equivalent to 44 times the terrestrial area of the mainland. So I will now present some aspects of the mission. So for several years, the use of bathymetric data has primarily been directed to the production of nautical charts. The current quest for geospatial information and its growing value are making seafloor mapping not only important for the safety of navigation, but also for many other domains. And we believe seabed information is the foundation for ocean knowledge and for its conservation and sustainable use. So the mission of the project is to contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of the sea by supporting research and promoting development aligned with United Nations agenda. So here you can see the current state of the project. The high resolution surveys began in 2005, and the percentages are referred to full bottom coverage. So the area with the best bathymetric coverage is the mainland, EEZ, with 78%, and the one with the poorest coverage is the Azores, EEZ, 39%. In recent years, most of the mapping efforts have been directed towards this area, this archipelago, in order to level up its coverage. So the total coverage of all the maritime spaces is around 55%. Here you can see the estimated survey days needed to complete the project. These calculations were made considering that the surveys are conducted by surface vessels, which means the survey effort mainly depends on the depth of the area. So we estimated around 1,000 survey days to complete the EEZs and 1,800 survey days to complete all the maritime spaces. These computations were made in the year 2020, which means around 100 or 180 survey days per year till 2030. So I will now explain how that data is being collected. So although this project only started in 2017, the high resolution hydrographic surveys began in 2005 in an effort to acquire the necessary data to support the continental shelf extension claim. And between 2005 and 2009, which was the deadline to present the claim, over 900 survey days were executed, averaging more than 150 survey days per year. All of these surveys were conducted and are still being conducted by these two Portuguese Navy hydrographic vessels, Dom Carlos and Gacotinho, which are equipped with two multi-beams each for depths up to 2,000 and 11,000 meters. Scientific cruises that operate in the Portuguese maritime spaces are another source of data. We have an average of 25 cruises per year, and some of them collect bathymetric data. For this project, we have also been contacting these entities that are responsible for these cruises in order to retrieve the data faster than the usual bureaucratic procedure. So these images are examples of the coverage of EOMAP and SEAMAP from France, BSH from Germany, and NOAA from the US. This has been a time-consuming process, so we encourage all data holders to, if they cannot disclose the data, at least to public release the coverage extent in order to better direct our survey efforts. So finally, I will now describe how data can be downloaded. The Portuguese Hydrographic Institute is committed to the EHO goals, namely to increase the use of hydrographic data for the benefit of society. So we are evolving from a product-based to a data-centric approach, placing data at the center of the agency and creating data specifically designed for reuse by a broader community of users. So this is the case of bathymetry. It was primarily used for nautical charts, and it is now available for a broader and extended use, increasing its value. So in this sense, we recently launched a web portal. You can see the link here, where you can find, access, download, and use the bathymetric data of this project. This data is also available at the BCDB. So data is divided into several grids, depending on the volume of data. You just need to select the area that you are interested in, fill out the form, and you will receive the data in your email. The data is organized in XYZ files with longitude, latitude, and depth, and you will receive several files, one for each horizontal resolution. The resolution will depend on the depth of the area, according to this table here. And for instance, for a depth between 50 and 250 meters, the horizontal resolution will be 32 meters. You will also receive a metadata file, which you can see an extract here, describing, for instance, the horizontal and the vertical reference systems of the data. So this concludes my presentation. I leave you with the links to the project website and story map, to the project data portal, and to our MESTI portal, where you can access other marine data besides bathymetry. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I really enjoy seeing how much progress you guys have done, even though you just started like a few years ago. And I can say from the team that we're actively integrating the data that you just presented into the Seabed 2030 compilation. So thank you so much for that. We're very happy to have just more data to add to the grid. So moving on to our next presentation, we're gonna have Commander Nigel Townsend, and we're gonna have some insight on the Australian seabed. So yeah, welcome. You can start. Oh yeah, it's a
Hello, my name's Commander Nigel Townsend. I'm the chair of AusSeabed, and I'd like to give you a progress on seabed mapping activities and the activities of Seabed from Australia. One of the things that AusSeabed has done recently is conduct an economic study into the value of seabed mapping, and this has proven very beneficial and highlighted the true value of the seabed mapping activity and making seabed data available. You can see some figures there with an estimate of direct use of seabed mapping worth 16 billion to the Australian economy, and unlocking up to $50 billion for other sectors using the data. So clearly a very valuable asset, as I'm sure we all know. With AusSeabed, we're working towards making Australian seabed data accessible. We're working through making products available, making the coverage through data being available for people to download, but also promoting increased data collection. And we're trying to promote the awareness of the seabed mapping and AusSeabed data in Australia. Just an update on what's been happening down under. AusSeabed has made more data available on the AusSeabed portal. We've collected more data through various community and activities. We've been pushing the new data infrastructure on AusSeabed to be able to contribute and publish more data. We've been building our tools and guidelines to make the collection of data and the quality of that data of a greater value. And we've been increasing the stakeholder engagement to stay and connect with other end users. So the status as it is at the moment, we have over 2 million square kilometres of data on the AusSeabed portal. In the last year, we've published 38 new surveys from 10 contributors, and we've had over 23,000 downloads. But we know that there's more than 17 million square kilometres of data locked up in various databases in the community, in the AusSeabed community. And so our challenge is to contact those data holders and to get that information published. And the bottleneck is really in the publication of that data and making it available. Just looking at the data collection activity, it is a team effort in Australia. We have a number of government and state government contributors. The Australian Hydrographic Office has its Hydroscope Industry Partnership Program, which is a national effort to map the seabed. It's into its third year of collection and has over 25,000 square kilometres of data collected so far, focusing on less than 100 metres. And we have completed 21 surveys as a partnership between government and industry. You can see some of the data that's been collected there through the Hydroscheme effort with overlapping surveys from various years, primarily focused on the less than 100 metres and looking at high shipping areas. We also have the Marine National Facility run by the CSIRO, which has the RV investigator undertaking deep water survey activities around Australia. The New South Wales Government has been undertaking seabed survey activities on the coastline with over 400 square kilometres of multibeam data and LiDAR survey along the coast. James Cook University continues to target mapping in the Great Barrier Reef and has started a program of crowdsourced bathymetry using 8 vessels. We also have the Minderoo Foundation undertaking projects in the deep areas of Western Australia. And we were very fortunate to have the Smith Ocean Institute vessel, RV Falconer, in the area in the last 18 months, collecting over 200,000 square kilometres of data. In the future, we've mapping down under, we have the HIP partnership, hopefully continuing, which will focus on the EEZ and depths less than 200 meters. We have the National Marine Facility RV Investigator undertaking deep water surveying, and we now have the RSV Noina are in Australian waters to undertake Antarctic surveys. The Australian Institute of Marine Science is doing tropical water mapping, and as previously mentioned, we have James Cook Uni undertaking activities using crowdsourced bathymetry. We also recently saw the Hydrographic Surveyors Training at IIC run a IHO Cat B course to improve the quality of survey training in Australia, and there's new technology and development coming online through various centres promoting their use. So looking forward to the next year, we have HIP projects undertaken all around Australia, James Cook University working in the tropical areas, the Marine National Facility working offshore and down in Antarctica, and AAD also now working in Antarctica with the Noina. Looking at the infrastructure for AusSeabed, we have a publication schedule on the site to publicize which surveys are being published. We have a cloud optimized infrastructure under development to improve the publishing and preparation of data. We're preparing to connect more data hubs to get more data published through the AusSeabed site. And we're also preparing to publish the HIP data, gridded data at 30-meter resolution. Other initiatives that AusSeabed have been pushing is the development of QACS, which is a quality assurance tool for the collection of multi-beam echo sounder data. We've developed a range of guidelines, and we continue to develop further guidelines to guide users in the collection of data. We're developing the GMRT AusSeabed platform to allow users to grid data from a range of inputs on the AusSeabed site. We've developed a survey coordination tool to allow various collection agencies to publicize and coordinate their survey collection activities. We've developed a HIP request tool to allow organizations to request surveys to be considered for in the HIP program. And we publish upcoming surveys so that people can see where vessels are going to go operate and collect surveys. And more recently, we've published a new national areas of interest so people can register their areas of interest for future data collection activities. So looking forward to the next year, we have HIP continuing. We have more voyages by the RV Investigator. We have the GMRT demo being developed in Bass Strait, marine park surveys underway, and many other activities. So we continue to engage with our various stakeholders to further promote and develop AusSeabed mapping to make data publicly available and to promote the collection of new data sets. That's the community that we have that works towards AusSeabed, and we encourage anyone else who's involved in the Australian region to join and become a member of the AusSeabed community. I hope this information has been beneficial to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Commander Nigel Townsend on the Australian seabed. And yeah, so for the next presentation, we're gonna have Caitlin Adams, and she's gonna give us an update on the Aspire program.
All right, thank you, Sheila. Can you see my screen? I have no sense of it.
Yeah, and we can hear it really well too.
All right, perfect. So yeah, I'm here today to talk to you a bit about the Atlantic Seafloor Partnership for Integrated Research and Exploration, or the Aspire campaign. Let's see if it'll advance. So just to set the stage a bit about our program, which is NOAA Ocean Exploration, and the work that we do, we use a number of different mechanisms to do ocean exploration, but all of our work sort of centers on these same principles of exploration, which is that we are always trying to meet as many needs as we can. So we talk to both the ocean science community, the resource management community. We're always looking to collect, the most useful quality data that will meet the most needs. We're looking to collect data systematically. So we're always looking to make sure that we're expanding on existing bathymetric coverage, that we are going to new areas and really getting the most bang for our buck. Oh, sorry, I used an idiom. Basically, that we're trying to make sure that we do the most that we can for the resources that we have. We are also really committed to sharing our discoveries with the public. So if you've ever visited our website, we have a pretty robust engagement division, and we make sure that we are live streaming whenever we can. and sharing as much as we can. And all of our data is open access, makes it to the archive as quickly as possible. So when I talk about an ocean exploration campaign, what I mean is that we basically organize a series of expeditions over multiple years to either a geographic area of interest or a priority of interest. For the last several years with the Aspire campaign, that focus area has been the North Atlantic. So we try and make sure that we are bringing in as many partners as we can, that we are aligning our priorities, that we're not doing duplicative work, and that we're really coordinating and amplifying our message. Sorry, I have kittens that are, of course, now choosing to terrorize me. So we use as many exploration platforms as we can, technologies, and we make sure that all of our data is shared both across our partners and externally. So one of the main tools that we use is the NOAA ship Okeanos Explorer. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that ship, but some of you might not be. It is the only federal vessel dedicated to ocean exploration. So it also has 2 ROVs on board, both the camera sled and the ROV Deep Discoverer. And we operate that ship for the past several years all across the Atlantic, but it has gone all around the world. And we'll actually head out to the Pacific next year. Though I don't think it's ever been, it has been to the Indian Ocean quite some time ago. So the Aspire campaign, as I said, is a multi-year, multinational collaborative field campaign. We've been operating since 2016. It's an endorsed action under the Galway Statement on Atlantic Ocean Cooperation. And while it's coordinated through NOAA, we're trying to meet as many needs as possible. We've been working with the EU and Canada since the start. The logos on the side there are just a few of our partners that have been involved. And the objectives of the Aspire campaign are really to improve our knowledge of unexplored areas, both within the US waters and on the high seas, and to characterize sensitive communities, enhance our ability to predict where those habitats are, where submarine hazards are. And then we pretty much, entirely amplified the mission of Seabed 2030, which our goal is to expand bathymetric coverage as much as we can in the North Atlantic. And so I'll walk you through a couple of things that we have achieved over the last several years. So this here just shows you the extent of the Aspire expeditions that we've executed. I don't expect anyone to be able to read all of those expedition names and locations, but you can sort of see a lot of them have been focused on the US East Coast. Some of that was due to COVID and just the logistical realities of the last several years, but we actually are out on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge as we speak, which is pretty exciting. So far, we've had 9 ships. We've executed 642 days at sea and counting. We've mapped over 477,000 square kilometers, and we've conducted over 200 dives with ROVs, AUVs, and 1 HOV. So here, I'm just going to show you a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish, especially as it relates to seabed mapping. So early on in the campaign, we identified the Blake Plateau as a pretty significant priority, both for our fisheries management partners in the region and a lot of our ocean exploration partners. There's been a lot of work in the shallow edges, but not much beyond that at all. The map you're seeing here shows both the US EEZ boundary, but then that white boundary is actually a habitat area of particular concern, so a fisheries management area. And there had been quite a lot of work done on that westward edge, but pretty much nothing beyond that, and a lot of the area was unmapped. So over the last several years, we have sent, I don't even know off the top of my head how many Okeanos Explorers cruises to the region, but I'm actually happy to report that we have filled in the entire area. This was done through Okeanos Explorer surveys. We actually contracted Fugro, and they did a big survey for us of some pretty extensive deep water areas. It was the largest mapping gap left on the US East Coast, and now it's mostly filled in. So right now we are underway on our Voyage to the Ridge 2022. So this is the second of 3 missions to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. We've been planning this work since 2018. Thanks to the pandemic, it was delayed several years, but we are finally out there. We had our first mapping expedition in May and early June to the Charlie Gibbs fracture zone, where we mapped over 46,000 square kilometers of seafloor and actually revealed a number of pretty exciting features that were otherwise unknown. The current mission that we're on actually ends this weekend on July 30th. They'll actually come into port in the Azores, and then we'll send out one more ROV and mapping expedition for most of August. And they'll actually go from the Azores all the way down to San Juan, Puerto Rico. So they'll be mapping and sending the ROV down along the southern extent of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So this is a quick little slideshow to show you some of the things that we found on that first mapping expedition to Charlie Gibbs. So this is the original satellite derived data in the region along the overall fracture zone. We filled in a pretty, we obviously weren't able to do multiple swaths over it, but you can see how much coverage that we got. Here's a 3D view revealing some pretty significant features. This here, you can't even see the escarpment until that data was collected. And then finally, I think this is the coolest one for sure, where you sort of see that there might be a seamount here. And there's actually quite a lot of terrain on the seafloor that was just completely masked by the satellite altimetry. So as I mentioned before, all of our data are QA/QC'd and sent to archive with the NOAA National Centers for Environmental Information, or NCEI, typically within 90 days. And all NCEI bathymetry data are interoperable with the DCDB. So everything that we're collecting eventually makes it to you. And I would encourage anyone that's interested to follow along with our current expedition on oceanexplorer.noaa.gov. We have been live streaming ROV dives every single day, and we've been to hydrothermal vents. We've seen really extensive coral habitats, just seen some really cool stuff over the last several days, and I expect that to continue for the rest of the summer. So I welcome any questions that you have, and there is both my contact information and our website and all of our social media. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. That was a great presentation of the Aspire program. If anyone has questions, they can ask in the chat, but as of right now, we're gonna have a quick 5-minute break. So you can go to the bathroom or you just get some coffee, and we'll be right back.
All right, everyone. I think we can start to slowly reconvene and join the last part of this series of presentation. So I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Leila Jolie, and just like Sheila, I have been working at Lamont as a data apprentice since the beginning of the summer. It's been a great experience. I have learned a lot. I'm a mechanical engineering major, and it's been great to see a project of such a big envergadure and see so many different countries collaborating together. So I've been very excited to listen to all of you, and we still have a lot of great presentation ahead of us. So we will start by hearing from Mia Schumacher about the iAtlantic mapping efforts. She's a hydrographer at GeoMar. The presentation is recorded. And then we will hear from Cecilia Zulema Cortina Guzman about the Meso-American and Caribbean Hydrographic Commission, before moving on to Commander Christophe Tennyson, who will talk to us about Southern African and Island Hydrographic Commission. We were supposed to then have a talk by Mika Odido on mapping the seafloor around Africa, the opportunities and the challenges, but unfortunately, that presentation will not happen. We will, however, provide you with some update that a team has received from Mika. And we will finish by hearing Mr. Geoffroy Lamarche from GEBCO on developing a strategy and how we can ensure that parents and children's organizations are coherent and can support each other. So without further ado, let's hear Mia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here, and sorry I can't be there in real or in person. My name is Mia Schumacher. I'm from GeoMar in Kiel, and I work in iAtlantic. iAtlantic is a project that is funded by the EU, and it basically assesses the health of Atlantic ecosystems. So let me just share my screen quickly. Today I wanted to talk very shortly, introduce to you my work in work package 2 of iAtlantic, namely to collate and unlock existing bathymetry data in our study areas and beyond, of course, and to talk about the status quo. So what you can see here is a map showing, first of all, in pink, our 12 iAtlantic study areas. Each of them is kind of representing some unique ecosystem and environment. What else you can see here are track lines of the German vessel fleet, research vessel fleet, since the 90s. And in green, you can see the unlocked data sets where we have been granted access, but a lot of them are not yet published. In blue, you can see the data sets that are integrated into GEBCO. And in red, data sets with a moratorium. To give you a little overview about statistics. So we have 460 cruises in total. 431 have been granted access. And in GEBCO, we have 46. 7 have a moratorium. So in total, we have 385 bathymetry data sets that are unlocked, but still not published. So yeah, we have two data sets I would like to mention here are, first of all, the I Mirabilis cruise. That was an iAtlantic cruise, which was to the Cape Verdes, and they provided a huge data set around the Cape Verde Island and Calamosto Seamount. And the second one has been provided in Petrobras, Brazilian oil company, and unlocked by Rodrigo Santana, Brazilian professor. And it's a huge data set that's, I think, about 200,000 square kilometers, and off the Brazilian coast within the Brazilian EZ. And that's a great contribution because it's in this area, we hardly have any bathymetry. So that's a great contribution. Yeah, I guess that's already it from my side. On a totally different note, I would like to mention a discussion that came up recently in the iAtlantic community regarding potential misuse, and I say misuse in quotation marks because I don't have a better word for it. So potential misuse of high resolution bathymetry data by fishing industry, oil companies, mining companies. So they because they use the data to find new fishing grounds, and this may be very harmful to pristine areas, like for example seamounts, if they use trawl nets or big harvesting machines. So hence people tend to not publish data to preserve such areas. And Steve Hall and I had a chat about this issue. I don't know if he's here, if he's attending the conference. And we thought to open up some roundtable or have a mini conference to discuss and think about how to solve this. So how to publish data, but still, make sure that they are not used for destructive purposes. So I just wanted to spread the word here, so that you are aware of this issue. And if you have comments or ideas, please don't hesitate to contact me. Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you so much and have a great conference. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Mia. That was great. And great conversation towards the end. I think it's important that we all ask ourselves the right question. It's definitely a concern that our work doesn't end up being used against the international benefits, which is a conversation we can maybe keep for the end. In order to kind of stay on schedule, I will now leave Cecilia Zulema-Cortina Guzman to present you about the Meso-American and Caribbean Hydrographic Commission.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, you're all good to go.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning, afternoon, or evening to all of you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this meeting. My name is Cecilia Cortina, and I am the coordinator of the Seabed 2030 project for the region of the Hydrographic Commission of Mesoamerica and the Caribbean, the MACC, and the IOC Subcommission, AIOCaribe, and adjacent regions. I'm going to present the status of the Seabed 2030 project in the MACC. Since the meeting of the MACC 20, a server was appointed as coordinator of the Seabed 2030 project for the MACC. This is the MACC webpage where you can see the implement and current documentation regarding the Seabed 2030 project, the most relevant, the status of the Work Plan 2021, a template about of NOAA data exchange, the Seabed 2030 strategy for MACC and AIOCaribe, map of the Seabed 2030 history, and some circular letters sent to member states and associates regarding crowdsourced bathymetry, the MAP web application for Seabed 2030, and the presentations. You can find in the webpage and some documents I will explain later. The presentations of the webinars, among other documents, recordings, and videos generated from each of them are available on the website. In 2020, a series of webinars were held with the support of Vicky Ferrini and Jennifer Jentz. The topics were about introduction for the mapping the region, building a map, increased data coverage about CSV project, and some other topics. To achieve the objectives of the Seabed 2030 project in the MACC region and contribute to the action of the Decade of the Oceans, the IOC of the UNESCO Subcommission for the Caribbean and adjacent regions and the MACC are working together. the boost regional contributions to this important initiative. Part of this outcome is the MACH-EOCaribe strategy 2021 to 2030. This strategy has a mission, acquire and shares the data necessary to create a complete map of the MACH region through multi-sector partnerships and collaboration. The strategy is based on 3 goals, which are contribute existing non-public bathymetric data to the IHO-DCDB and GEBCO grid, increase data coverage, and build capacity for mapping contributions. For implementation of this strategy, we have an annual work plan has been prepared since 2021, which has been updated according to the progress and needs of the states, and results are reviewed on an annual basis at their respective meetings. The work plan considers 15 actions to achieve the objectives of the strategy. These collaborative efforts requires extensive partnerships and coordinations among governments, industry, academic, and non-governmental organizations and citizens. The 2021 webinar was focused on the topics exploring applications for bathymetric grid generations and remote bathymetric data processing. In the plenary for the MACH 2022, in the year 2021, the results of the reports issued by the states were presented, and we can contribute to the Seabed 2030 project, and we have a progress. According to the needs of the states, some actions were identified as slightly changed, only specifically into actions related to the CSB project. In this year, we have a webinar which took place a few weeks ago. The topics was focused on CSB project, how to respond the IRCC circular letter number 1. That was about of the CSB data from ships within waters subject to their national jurisdiction into the public domain, according to the national policy, or update on how to carry out the CSB field trials with designated trusted nodes. Based on currently available information and interactive web application on the Seabed 2030 sections on the MACH initiatives website shows how much of the region has been surveyed and where the known gaps are. This interface presents several information layers to promote collaboration and cooperation toward the goals of Seabed 2030. Layers are available and managed by many partners. Authoritative layers are used whenever available and include GEBCO 2020 map and coverage, non-data coverage layers, public data, non-public existing data, and planet surveys. Creating an accurate observation-based bathymetric map of the region is essential for the sustainable use of critical ocean resource, and we will help achieve the goal number 14 for the decade, life below water, and the endorsed Nippon Foundation-GEBCO Seabed 2030 project. The MACH-EOCaribe Seabed 20 project aligns with the decade program with a high-resolution baseline seabed map of the tropical Americas and Caribbean, region is foundational to inform and support also the outcome number 2, understand, protect, restore, manage, and the outcome number 4, predicted ocean, where society understands changing ocean conditions, and the number 6, an accessible ocean with open and access to data. This will constitute a major regional contribution to the Nippon Foundation-GEBCO Seabed 2030 project, which aspires to empower the world to make policy decisions, use the ocean sustainable, and undertake scientific research that is informed by a detailed understanding of the global ocean floor. The register for the call for Decade Actions number 2 was in January in this year. And finally, on June, we got an endorsement letter of Decade Action number 140.2. This document sets out the responsibilities of the partner responsible for implementing the project, and as well as providing other useful information and conditions pertaining to the endorsement. In this action, we have an important active role with some communities and global stakeholder forum to collaborate with the other Decade partners. We will work together with the coordination structures to catalyze the co-design and co-delivery with the new Decade actions and other more responsibilities. In addition to the registration of the MACC and AIORC project in the Decade of the Oceans, also in the last IRCC 14, the MACC paper on establishing a Seabed 2030 CSP coordinator collaboration team was registered with the support of Jennifer Jens. She is the head of the CSP working group. And in the next plenary session of the MACC, which will be at the end of this year, the status of the current work plan will be presented and the 2023 work plan will be proposed. Thank you very much for your attention and your invitation.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. It was a great presentation, and I love the fact that collaboration and raising awareness had such a central part in it. And congratulations on the endorsement for the Decade Action. That's quite an accomplishment already. And to continue with great presentation, we're now going to leave it to Commander Christoph Tennyson to present about Southern African and Island Hydrographic Commission. As usual, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and they will get answered as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the crowdsourced bathymetry Seabed 2030 initiative that South Africa is embarked on. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Next slide, please. So I'm going to kick off with the GEBCO chart that we had, or the coverage for the Southern African Islands Hydrographic Commission, the 2021 version provided by Dr. Farini to us. So you can see there what we've seen now yesterday and today as well, similar coverage areas where black is obviously the areas where there's very little or no data coverage. So in the Southern African Islands Hydrographic Commission area of responsibility, things were looking rather bleak by the end of 2021, and the requirement for crowdsourced bathymetry is quite obvious. Next slide, please. Moving on to 2022, that was an image dated in May. The image looks quite a lot better. There's quite a bit of information that has been submitted to GEBCO, and the progress is really applauded and welcomed. However, you can see there's still quite a few large gaps that needs addressing as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So now, knowing the shortcomings and what we're looking at in terms of our area of responsibility, the South African Navy Hydrographic Office embarked on a collaborative project with the Institute of Maritime Technology in Simonstown in Cape Town to embark on a trial Seabed 2030 project in terms of crowdsourced bathymetry using primarily data loggers on vessels of opportunity to gather information. So we went into partnership with Seabed 2030. They had agreed on donating 100 data loggers to the Hydrographic Office. These arrangements was starting to take fruition towards the end of 2019. However, when push come to shove in 2020 and we had to start taking delivery of some of these, or the first of these loggers, the global COVID pandemic sort of ruined our plans somewhat. We had quite a bit of issue getting the first team serve NMA data loggers in country because of all the pandemic restrictions. And then later on in 2021, we received the rest of the loggers, but these were yacht device voyage recorders. So at first, we only looked at data collection, but soon we realized that data collection is only part of Seabed 2030 and crowdsourced bathymetry, and we were not addressing the issue or the potential rather of data sharing from data custodians elsewhere. So we split the concept or the trial in two parts. Part one, the data collection using the data loggers on board vessels of opportunity. And then secondly, approaching bathymetry data custodians to share whatever they have with us, if willing to do so. We made it very clear that we were looking for existing survey data, bathymetric data sets, gridded products, even if it's low density, and we were targeting survey exploration as well as the engineering sectors. And we also made it clear that even if data custodians were hesitant to provide the actual data, if they can provide us at least with polygons of area that they have data, so that maybe in future we can perhaps unlock that data sets, but at least we know that there is data in an area and we don't have to apply resources to that area. Next slide, please. So in terms of executing the trial, firstly, we had to identify potential regional role players or stakeholders. We initially sent out letters of invitation to about 28 stakeholders that were identified, of whom 23 of them responded favorably. Obviously, that was the initial launch of Seabed 2030 in South Africa, and that was in 2020. And ever since, we have continued to approach potential stakeholders. So this is something that will be ongoing for the duration of Seabed 2030. And obviously, you cannot just sit on your laurels. You have to keep approaching individuals and companies and organizations to participate. Initially, we targeted commercial fishing industry, as well as small scale or subsisting fishing communities, recreational boating, government vessels, private sector, etc. So quite a wide net was thrown out. At this point in time, we have 5 data loggers installed on board vessels of opportunity. It might not seem much at this point in time, but I will explain a little bit later why the number might seem so low. At this point in time, we also have 8 stakeholders that provided data sets as well as gridded products to the Hydrographic Office, of which one provided polygons of areas surveyed, and then 5 provided only contact information. And I want to reiterate that even if you approach somebody to participate in Seabed 2030, even though they might not have access to vessels or they might not have data or access to data, they might know somebody who does. So never write off somebody just providing information. Always try and chase that information down. The data that was submitted by February was checked and verified and collated and submitted to GEBCO, and is currently going through a GEBCO internal review process. Next slide, please. So looking at the vessels that are taking part, the first vessel to have the data loggers installed was obviously a vessel from IMT, Institute for Maritime Technology, who installed a vessel for testing and trial purposes, and they also developed a standard operating procedure for installing the data loggers. Then the first big bite that we had was the MV Edinburgh, belonging or operated by Ovenstone Agencies, in collaboration with Tristan Lobster, who does commercial fishing off Tristan da Cunha. So we were very glad to snag that vessel. Obviously, we can get some good data between Cape Town, where she operates from, and Tristan da Cunha to gather some data. Thus far, she has had 2 deployments to Tristan da Cunha. The first deployment, we had no problems whatsoever, got a lot of data from the vessel. However, on the second vessel, on the second cruise or deployment to Tristan, there were some technical difficulties, and unfortunately, they couldn't record anything. Then we also approached the National Sea Rescue Institute for South Africa. They jumped right on board. And currently we have 2 of the NSRI rescue launches, the coastal rescue launches with data loggers on board. And in fact, the NSRI committed to such an extent that as these vessels are being built, brand new, the data loggers will be fitted as standard on board the vessel. So that is absolutely great news. However, the implementation of these vessels will be prolonged over quite a few years, since they are being built and delivered about 1 every 6 months. The third one currently being built for the Port of Durban. Then we also started approaching estuarine areas or small craft harbors as part of a larger maritime safety authority outreach to increase safety of navigation within these small harbors, as well as estuarine areas. And we managed to get 2 boats from a Lower Breda River Conservancy on board. One actually belonged to the Conservancy, and the other one was a member of the public, very aptly called Why Not? I think that should be sort of the motto or the slogan for Seabed 2030, as to, if you're not going to participate, why not? So currently we've got these vessels underway. You will see that they're very small vessels, and unfortunately, because of the location of South Africa and what we do in our resources, we are very limited in terms of offshore operations off the shelf or even outside of the EEZ, and we depend a lot on vessels that are transiting within that area, as well as the mining and offshore oil and gas industry to provide us with survey information, which is coming in a little bit slower than we would like. So a lot of our effort is based in our coastal areas, of which we have already submitted our data to GEBCO. But even if the data itself might not be useful to GEBCO, it can provide buy-in to the project by explaining to the locals that you are providing information based on your local knowledge, which will improve your own safety of navigation. So that's a point that's useful for selling the project. Also, it proves the concept of using the loggers. So even if we cannot provide useful data to GEBCO itself, we can provide lessons learned, and we can provide some guidance on how to approach and how to operate these loggers, as well as potential stakeholders, which is what we're doing now currently. We're providing feedback, and we've provided feedback on quite a few forums already. So hopefully this is useful. Next slide, please. So in terms of data sharing, I've already touched a bit on it. We've got quite a few stakeholders that provided data sets. The lesson learned, or the lessons learned from this is what is absolutely critical, is to establish a feedback loop between your potential stakeholders, your actual stakeholders, and to give them a bit of feedback and keep them into the loop as what's going on. Provide a graphical representation of the data to show them, listening, this is what your data looks like, this is what we're going to use it for. And then also to provide ongoing technical assistance when required. And then we are also crediting participation on our website. And we are continuously inviting SAIC member states as well as primary charting authorities within the SAIC region to participate in crowdsourced bathymetry, which at this point in time is a bit challenging. As we saw yesterday, very few of the member states within SAIC region have actually responded to the circular letter asking for member states to participate, and that is a big challenge at this point in time. Next slide, please. So in terms of the data that was shared and submitted to GEBCO in February of this year, which is currently undergoing review, that's just a graphic representation. So once again, we provided gridded data sets from our own database in terms of our own charts, but then also data that was shared with us in keeping with Seabed 2030. So quite a bit of data that's hopefully going to be ingested into the GEBCO data set, and hopefully we can cover a little bit more or get a little bit more coverage. Next slide, please. So in terms of challenges and opportunities, there's quite a lot. I'm just basically quickly going to touch on them. At first, we had a very low response from the commercial fishing and offshore mining industries, and the main concern there was the sharing of and the public making of data that might be sensitive to their industries. However, you can convince or try to convince them that the data is going to be ingested into larger data sets. No individual data sets that might provide, or high data sets for that matter, will be shared and made available that might be sensitive and that might jeopardize their own operations. But that's something that's ongoing. Obviously, COVID-19 had its own issues in terms of travel and quarantine vessels and restrictions and between meetings, although that is easing off at the moment. And we did, like VTC, like we're doing now, we did find ways around it. Then there was also lengthy decision-making processes for participation. A lot of the big companies, the decisions have to be made at executive level, and sometimes you will have to wait months before you have any feedback on whether they're going to participate or not. I've already mentioned the limited off-the-shelf deployments. However, that's an ongoing issue. As I said already, for SAIC, the fact that most of the member states have not committed to crowdsourced bathymetry is a big concern. And throughout SAIC and our various meetings, we are encouraging member states to participate. In terms of data acquisition and processing, because you're using vessels of opportunity, each vessel has got its own setup and its own suite of navigation equipment. So the variety of different sensors present different data formats, especially within the team serve loggers. However, we've used Python open source code to adapt to meet the individual data stream requirements for processing essential data. But at this point in time, there's no one code for all solutions. So with each data set you have in from each vessel of opportunity, you have to look at them individually and to put the data into something that is useful that can be processed later on. Then we also had issues with the team serve USB stick reliability. 2 of the 4 team serve loggers experienced faulty USB storage devices. And that was actually a reason why the second deployment of the Edinburgh didn't record anything. And the easy way around that is to just provide your own commercial off-the-shelf 16 gigabyte USB devices. So that's easy, but it's still a lesson hard learned. Then the other issue that we are identifying is data quality. Because of the lack of calibration as well as sensor synchronization on these vessels of opportunity, we are seeing some quality issues. For example, on a standard survey vessel, you've got something called the 1 pulse per second, or the 1 PPS, that synchronizes all your sensors, which means that every GPS fix is associated with the sounding. However, with these vessels of opportunity, that is not the case. So the timestamp versus sounding versus position is not always the same. So again, you have to look at all of these sets individually, and that does take a little bit of time. Next slide, please. So in terms of opportunities, the primary charting authorities within the SAIC area, there's quite a bit of opportunity there to encourage the countries that they're responsible for participating in Seabed 2030. Obviously, as a charting authority, you can't just share the countries that you're responsible for data without their permission. So that is something that we have to work on, but I don't necessarily see it as a challenge. I see it as an opportunity. Then there's the first to jump willingness. Initially, your stakeholders are very sort of cautious to put their feet into the water. But once we had the Edinburgh on board from Ivanstone agencies, the rest sort of started falling in line. So it's always a good idea to target an initial stakeholder or participant, and then use that as the format of an example to try and sell the idea to others. So Edinburgh definitely paved the way, and it's a good idea to have that first company on board to pave the way. Another, as I said already, another selling point for Seabed 2030 is for local benefit. If you can use local knowledge and local boats to incorporate that into Seabed 2030, not only does it serve in their own interest, but you might get a lot more vessels involved, and where they actually feel that they're being part of something bigger. Which is, of course, to their own benefit. Not directly financially necessarily, but they will see the benefits in the long run. Next slide, please. Then also, Monaco Explorations are planning an Indian Ocean expedition. The plan was still for the end of 2022. It might happen this year, still might beginning of next year. And next week, as a matter of fact, we are starting to suss out the details. The SA Gallas 2 from South Africa will be used as a vessel of opportunity in all ICLUDE to facilitate this cruise. And obviously, we're looking forward to collaborating with the Monaco Explorations. And obviously, this data will also then be shared with GEBCO as part of Seabed 2030. Next slide, please. Yeah, not to keep everyone waiting, there was just 2 more slides that I wish to cover. I can just quickly run through them. The IHO crowdsourced bathymetry working group, we had provided some feedback during the last SAIC meeting on crowdsourced bathymetry, where the IHO director, Luigi Sinapi, also emphasized the importance of continued outreach activity, especially through the regional hydrographic commissions, where South Africa and myself has been appointed as the SAIC representative for Seabed 2030. Then also, he also encouraged the circular letter 1 of 2020 for countries to consider crowdsourced bathymetry. There we go. And to offer a positive response to enable provision of crowdsourced bathymetry into the public domain. And then obviously also to encourage member states to release data sets, or at least subsets via the IHO DCDB, to support crowdsourced bathymetry initiative with positive actions, such as requiring all research vessels to collect bathy data for uploading, and when on passage or when it does not interfere with other research activities. And then also we encouraged crowdsourced bathymetry or Seabed 2030 regional coordinators to provide updates and thoughts on crowdsourced bathymetry related activity in their regional hydrographic commissions, which is what we did, and we are working with each other also to spread the word. Next slide, please. As part of the feedback at regional level, at the regional hydrographic levels, we have to provide training as well as capacity building requirements and opportunities, as well as future initiatives. Since this was now the last year where I, as the site coordinator, had to provide feedback, there was very little information that came through from other member states, and I just want to invite and encourage member states within SAIC, as well as any other role players for that matter, that might operate or might contribute for data within the SAIC region, to please contact me with either training opportunities or capacity building opportunities or requirements, or if you are going to be planning operations within our area, to also contact me so we can report on these initiatives going into the future. We don't want to report back to the regional hydrographic commissions that there's no input, so please assist in that regard. Next slide, please. And that's pretty much it. So what we as South Africa, as well as the Southern African Islands Hydrographic Commission, invites all of you to do is to note the presentation, consider and update the regional coordinator, which is me for SAIC, on any crowdsourced bathymetric activity within the SAIC region, and then also those from the member states within SAIC to offer a positive response to the IHO and IRCC circular letters regarding crowdsourced bathymetry. And member states not yet part of the crowdsourced bathymetry working group, to seriously consider joining or attending that working group. It really is a very active group, making some very good progress with obviously with the work on B12, which is the publication for crowdsourced bathymetry now up for acceptance. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I know it was possibly a bit longer than I hoped for, and that it was a few lessons learned, but should there be any questions, please you can get hold of me. The contact details are available through the chair or even in the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commander Tennyson. It was a great presentation. A quick few words before we move to the last presentation. So as you all can see, we're going to go over time a bit due to the technical difficulties we had earlier on. We are respectful and mindful of everybody's time. If you can stick around, we highly invite you to do so. We don't expect to go over by much. We will most definitely make a quick conclusion at the end and probably shorten the discussion. So we just heard Commander Tennyson. Again, thank you very much for the update and all the emphasis on data. Like Vicky said yesterday, we don't know what we don't know, so it's important to know what's mapped and what's not. We were supposed to hear from Mika Odido now, but unfortunately he won't be able to attend, and we will provide you with the update the team received. So now we will move on to our last presentation by Geoffroy Lamarche, who's a GEBCO guiding committee member. And unfortunately, Geoffroy is not with us today, but we have his recording.
Bonsoir, hello everyone. Let me share my screen and start my presentation. Unfortunately, I cannot be talking to you tonight live, so it's a bit late for me in New Zealand. But anyway, I've had these presentations, and hopefully they will provide to you a bit of thinking about what is GEBCO, where is GEBCO heading, and what is the next thing with this title about the strategy. Almost 1 year ago, I was appointed to the GEBCO Guiding Committee, and I was able to attend in person, lucky enough, at the last annual meeting in Monaco last April, about 3 months ago, during which we discussed several issues about GEBCO, and we reviewed the GEBCO activity of the years, and we discussed the future of GEBCO for the next years. The short presentation goes over the highlight of what GEBCO is, and help answering what is GEBCO. So the question of what is GEBCO is a silly question. Many people do not really know what GEBCO is. They say that GEBCO is that a program? Is it a group of people? Is that a product? Or is that just sort of a entity in the ether? Well, arguably it's a bit the three first one is a program. It's a series of products, as I'm going to show you. And also it's a great group of people working for the benefit of ocean science and ocean literacy. GEBCO was initiated by that man, Albert Ier of Monaco, in 1903. So it's actually celebrating this year's 219 years anniversary. Albert Ier had a good understanding of what was needed for the future of oceanography. He had a vision and he had a mission to provide the most authoritative, publicly available bathymetry data set for the world oceans. Remember that at that time, of course, what was available were dropline measurements, no more than a few thousands of them to cover the 5 oceans. Still, there was no chart of the oceans per se, and this meant Albert Ier, helped with a series of academics from France and Germany, I think, decided to remediate to this big gap in the science. I really encourage you to go through the history of GEBCO, this book that was published in 2003 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of GEBCO. There's some really fascinating story there. It's very easy to read. GEBCO had a really long history of seafloor mapping. Very successful and an activity of leadership in ocean mapping, ocean research, and ocean literacy as well. The first edition of GEBCO took actually 7 months to be compiled and was published in 1903. It was also called the Monaco Chart. The little printed map were presented at the Paris Academy of Science in January 1904 and was presented in Washington, D.C. later in the same year, as you can see it on the top left there. I tell you what, I saw the original one in Monaco in April when I visited the IOC. Sorry, the IHO, excuse me, the IHO. This is really emotional. When you've worked all your life in seafloor mapping to see the actually real first sheet of the seafloor of 1903 is something I really encourage you to do. Excuse me. Through the 20th century, so in the center line, through the 20th century, there were 5 paper editions of the chart series before GEBCO released its first digital product in the early 1990s. 1973, though, marks a very important milestone with the 5th edition. This is an important innovation of these editions with the inclusion of sounding control on the face of each sheet. The 5th edition was completed in 1982. It took 9 years to complete it, compared to 7 months for the first one. And that shows the increase in data, the complexity, and the type of work that GEBCO had to deal with to generate this map. And you can see the evolution to the Central Pacific map, of course, of absolutely almost hardly any data on the top left, and then a feature of the seafloor starting to appear on the center. It's throughout that time as well, around 1993, that the production of the chart and the running of GEBCO went under the umbrella of a joint committee of the International Hydrographic Organization, IHO, and the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC, of UNESCO. The GEBCO Guiding Committee, the GGC, was established at that time to be in a position to offer marine geoscientists around the world the possibility of publishing their work in a prestigious, high-quality chart series. GEBCO then moved into producing and making available digital bathymetry, as we know them now, and dataset product. It produced its first CD-ROM in 1994, which included track line control, undersea feature name, and coastline information, plus data viewing and data software. Quite an improvement. Recognizing the importance of the availability of good bathymetric data sets for applications such as ocean modeling work, GEBCO also released its first global bathymetric grid, the GEBCO 1-minute grid, in 1903. So what does GEBCO look like today? So GEBCO today looks like a series of this graph here. It looks like a main organizations led by the GGC. and it still operates under the joint auspices of the IHO and the IOC, to which it reports at the top there, and is chaired with the GEBCO Guiding Committee. It coordinates, however, and runs a number of activities, projects, and initiatives through several subcommittees, the one in gray, that are referred to in my title as children organizations. Actually, that's a term that needs to be used with parsimony. It's not an official term. I call them children because it's just follow the arrows. There's also a number of important sub-projects and important initiatives like the ISO DCDP and the Seabed 2030, of course, to which I'm talking today, which are linked and a very strong link with the Nippon Foundation. Let me go very rapidly through those subcommittees because they are quite important, but I encourage you to contact their respective chairs and look at their website and contribute to any of those subcommittees if you feel like you've got the expertise, the time, and will to do so. TSCOM is a technical subcommittee on ocean mapping, was established in 2006 to advise the Guiding Committee on all associate groups interested in the building and use of GEBCO products. It focuses essentially on emerging technology, on the maintenance of tools, and on the liaison with the IOC DCDP. Recently, also very importantly, it supported the metadata working group to review and harmonize the different metadata services being employed. SCRUM is a subcommittee for regional undersea mapping, was established with the aim of facilitating collaboration and communication between GEBCO, IOC, IHO, and the regional center of Seabed 2030, some of whom I'm talking now, and with a view of encouraging regional mapping effort and coordinating the incorporation of their competence into GEBCO and Seabed 2030 products. There's about 17 members representing 13 coastal states at the moment, 7 of which are from the GEBCO alumni who went through the Nippon Foundation GEBCO training program. I'll talk about that a bit later on. The priority has been put on the development of web apps to indicate area of interest. They developed also a YouTube channel. SCUFN, a subcommittee on undersea future name, is possibly the most formally established technical subcommittee of GEBCO. It arose from the need for a uniform policy for the handling of geographical names and the standardizations of undersea future names. SCUFN is very important. Name acceptations follow a robust and transparent process under every year at SCUFN's meetings, and this leads. You can trust me, and you can easily imagine that leads to very interesting and heated discussion at times. SCUFN also publishes nomenclatures used for undersea feature and publishes the GEBCO gatherers of undersea feature names. SCORE is a subcommittee on communication and outreach and public engagement. As its name says, it really focuses on communication strategy, renewing material, and identifying opportunity for engagement. SCED is a newly created subcommittee for education and training and essentially make the link with the training program. The IOC DCDP, the Data Center for Digital Bathymetry, based at NOAA in Boulder, Colorado, serves as a long-term archive for the GEBCO Ocean Mapping Program, as it does for the Nippon Foundation GEBCO Seabed 2030. It is an essential, it is a critical part of the GEBCO and Seabed 2030 program and project, and it's been there for many, many years. It holds more than 30 terabytes of ocean depth soundings now, and it's helped us moving into 21st century styles, data availability and development and archiving and maintenance. The training program is a really important part of GEBCO. It's part of what I called at the beginning ocean literacy. The GEBCO contributes with the help and the funding of the Nippon Foundations to actively to the training of the new generation of scientists and hydrographers in ocean bathymetry through supporting a 12-month course toward a postgraduate certificate in ocean bathymetry that aims at delivering a Cat A certificate. It's been going on for a very long time, and you will probably hear through that during this seminar, this conference, more about it. The course is held at the Center for Coastal and Ocean Mapping in New Hampshire at the University of New Hampshire. That importantly, many of the new Nippon Foundation GEBCO scholars are engaged through the Seabed 2030 and through GEBCO to work toward their purpose. And of course, and I won't mention it much more, but last but certainly not least is the 2030 project funded by the Nippon Foundation, very much part of the family GEBCO, of the GEBCO family, and we need and we want to do all we can to support its continuing effort towards success. In short, as I said, GEBCO is a project, a program, and its people. What next? Well, what next? We did go through the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats, and of course, we in April when we discussed the future of GEBCO, there's a couple of things that we sort of put on the table, and one of which was that GEBCO still hasn't got a strategy. IOC, IHO have got a strategy, their respective strategies. Some of the technical subcommittee have got their strategies. Seabed 2030 certainly has its strategy, but GEBCO itself hasn't. And it's a little bit contradictory, it's a little bit paradoxical. And so I was tasked with the role of developing the strategy. We also tasked IHO to go through a governance review, to present a governance review at the next annual meeting in October 2022 in Southampton. But importantly, we discussed the way of better supporting our project, including Seabed 2030 and the others. And we also discussed, but lightly, in the future, and that's probably something that will come in the strategy, do we want to include other type of data that just bathymetry data, water depth? Do we want to include backscatter data? Do we want to include modeling process protocols and methodologies? All this sort of thing have been discussed for many years, and no decision has been made, obviously. What about the strategy? GEBCO has not changed its vision since 1903. This is still the one you can read on the website. And as I said before, it still hasn't got a strategy. So some of the questions I have are the traditional, I'm asking myself and asking a group of us that have put together to write this strategy are the traditional questions that one asks when told to develop such a document. What do we want out of the strategy? What is the document for? Is it who is to set this strategy? What do we want for the next 5 years of GEBCO? But what do we want in the next 5 generations? The Pacific nations are well known to talk in number of generations rather than years. So 5 generations can be 100 years. How do we build a constructive relationship with GEBCO project and program? How do we work together toward the ultimate aims? And what is this ultimate aims? What is going to happen after Seabed 2030? What's going to happen after we build the entire map of the oceans, map the entire ocean? What is the next step? So the first action I have is to draft an outline and bullet point by the end of this month, big task. Then to reach out to sister organizations and subcommittees and distribute this outlet and ask for comments and help and suggestions. And certainly very much important, keep the communication on the progress and listen to you guys on what you think should be in this strategy. What do you see GEBCO doing, and how do you see GEBCO evolving, and how can we put that on paper so that the strategy is something that everyone in GEBCO knows what we want for our future. So I'm aiming for a first draft toward the end of September. I can tell you that's pretty much after tomorrow, and to present the first version of the strategy to be discussed at the GG meeting on the 31st of October in Southampton, in the UK. So we are still very much in the scoping phase of this strategy, and I need to move on into the writing phase. So let me thank you, but first let me ask you to tell me what you think. Tell me, I would really appreciate to hear what you think about what should be this strategy. Thank you for listening, but more importantly, thank you for your contribution to GEBCO through the Seabed 2030. Thank you more importantly to you all for your very hard work. This is very much appreciated.
All right, and thank you, Geoffroy, for this great presentation that gave us a little bit insight on GEBCO for those of us who didn't know. I will now leave it to Dr. Vicky Carini to close the session.
All right, thank you, Leila, and thank you everyone for all the participants and also for spending some extra time with us. Again, apologies for the delay that we had this morning and the technical difficulties. I'm just going to briefly go through a couple of slides here about accelerating toward the horizon. These were meant to seed our discussion. I'm not sure how much time people have left. We're happy to stay on as long as people would like to continue and talk, but we'll just step through these slides briefly. I think the two key components to accelerating toward 2030 involve technology development. Some of that we heard about in the last couple of days in terms of data acquisition through crowdsourced bathymetry, satellite-derived bathymetry. We didn't touch at all on autonomous platforms. There's a couple of images on the screen there of a couple that are just ramping up now and I think are really going to help us accelerate. As a project, we're really focused on inspiring and promoting this technology innovation and also helping to accelerate the uptake of new technology. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention technology development in terms of data products, which is something that we're very focused on here at Lamont. I think both sides of this are really going to help us over the next several years to meet our goals more efficiently. Of course, I think one of the biggest pieces that we have toward accelerating toward the future is really coordination and collaboration. I'm personally incredibly pleased and honored and delighted with the progress we've made in coming together as a community. There's so much good work happening around the region and around the world. We are learning to work together in new ways, and I think that ultimately that's really what this project is going to deliver for this community. We will continue working together beyond 2030. I'm fully confident of that. We're starting to share more and more information and knowledge, tools and workflows, not just data, but all different aspects of what we do. Some of the important work that I think is before us still is to work together to try to prioritize and coordinate mapping campaigns. And of course, the ongoing work of data sharing and trying to unlock, as someone said earlier, data that's not yet been shared. So there are several ways to get involved. Thank you all for joining us. Of course, this is a good start. If some of you are new, it's been a pleasure having you. Contributing data is, of course, very important. Letting us know about data that exists that's not yet in this ecosystem is really important. The talk that Mia gave earlier, there's a lot of data that she's helping to bring to light, as we say. The data that's offline is called dark data in the data world. So it'll be great to get more and more of that into this space. John Hall, who I'm looking at here on my screen, has done a lot of work over the years, assembling data and bringing it to light for us and contributing it to what we're doing. So everything that we can do to help move that forward is extremely helpful. Collecting new data, running transit data, turning the sensors on whenever possible, helping to change culture so that becomes the norm is hugely important. The uptake of crowdsourced bathymetry and getting that socialized is hugely important. With respect to meetings, this is a venue that we have. We do this, I think, just once a year. We could do this more frequently once we sort out our Zoom problems here at Columbia University so that we don't get interrupted again. We're happy to host sessions as often as people want to do that if it's helpful. There are other meetings that happen throughout the year, the GEBCO community meetings, some of which we heard about just now from Geoffroy. Also the Map the Gap Symposium, which is planned for later this year. Just ways to get more of us talking to each other, sharing knowledge, ideas, data, and really building community, because it's the community that will drive this forward. It's really all about the people. The people make the technology, the people make the technology work. We can do this together, I'm very confident. Also, training and knowledge sharing. Again, webinars, we can have webinars focused on particular techniques. We're happy to help facilitate that. And there's also the Nippon Foundation-GEBCO training program, which brings 6 people every year to the University of New Hampshire to learn about ocean mapping, to get a postgraduate degree, and also to become part of our community. So those are the points I wanted to deliver. If anyone, if you're able to stick around and continue the conversation with us, these are the points I think that are really important to try to discuss, whether now or offline or during a future engagement. We really want to hear from you about your needs. What are your priorities? What kinds of training and tools are necessary? What kinds of webinars could we establish for you? And are there upcoming opportunities with respect to data acquisition, meetings and conferences that we could join or help to organize? Anything to help gain momentum. And again, of course, any existing data that can be shared, if you can help us with that. The map that's here shows the countries of everyone who registered to participate in this meeting. This is the most countries we've seen yet. I don't know that anyone showed up. I don't know that everyone showed up, but we will be making everything available with permission of the presenters. And we hope to continue the conversation with everyone who did sign up to participate, even if they weren't able to join us. So I will stop talking and just open the floor for questions, comments, discussion. Again, we're happy to keep the Zoom open as long as people are able and willing to stick around and talk with us. You know, not for hours, but certainly for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever people are comfortable with. And if there are no questions, we're also happy to set everyone free and get on with the rest of your day. Looking in the chat to see if there's anything. Comments, questions? If you have one, you can raise your hand and we'll make sure that you can speak. All right, Haley, you got that? Yep, you got it. You can go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah. I really appreciate the presenters for putting up this. There's a conference. It's really interesting and educating and bringing us abreast with what GEBCO is doing and towards mapping the seabed by 2030. But what I'm really interested in finding out is about the GEBCO Nippon Foundation program. You know, I believe from what I've studied about the program, that it's for young geospatial scientists and geospatial engineers who want to, you know, grow a career in the hydrospatial space. And I've applied once, and I wasn't given a feedback if I was successful, if I didn't make the cut.
What happened? No. You just got muted somehow.
I really want to get a training and, you know, leverage on the possibilities and being a part of all that's going on here. How do I go about that, please? Thank you very much.
Tina, do you want to answer that?
Yes, as an alumna from that training program, I am really happy that you are interested and also that you applied. Maybe what I could say here is first, really, especially for the program, you can probably reach out for updates on our application. But also, I wanted to say that it's every year, as you did mention earlier, you can reapply. But I would like also to mention that there are some training that has been led by other alumni. It's part of the Ocean Training Global Academy. They were offering the basics of how to map the seafloor. Yeah, and I would be happy to talk more about that with you if you reach out.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, I don't know if you've seen the announcement a few days ago that 20 of the sail drone surveyors are going to be put to work on mapping the deep and inaccessible parts of the oceans. And they are proposing that the cost per day of each surveyor will be $2,500. And I have a feeling that within the Explorers Club community, in the event that you got some sort of certificate that said you'd map this, that, or the other thing, you could certainly put up a few days or a week's worth of sail drone data based upon what was obtained during the time that it went from California to Hawaii, with the average depth of the ocean being 4,000 meters plus minus. You could do a hell of a lot of mapping just and buzzing around in the deep Pacific. And I've put up 0.1% of the proposed $3.5 billion that Larry Mayer says would be required, and did the mapping in this area, but there are a lot more efficient methods of doing it. And I really think we should start thinking about that. Much of what I heard related to the committee reminds me of almost 40 years ago, dealing with IHO and IOC in order to get the Mediterranean mapping done. Ultimately, we put out 70 different charts, 6 different sets of the MED, and basically we're the only one who did all the overlay sheets required. I mean, sediment type together with sediment thickness, together with seismicity, magnetics, gravity, and bathymetry. So anyway, that's my 10 cents.
Thank you, John. I think that's a great idea to try to work with the Explorers Club, and I will talk to Jamie about that offline and see if we can approach them for some engagement. That would be great. Looks like we have a hand raised, Dan.
Yeah, thank you for unmuting me. I mean, I already said this is the first time I participated in this community, and I have learned a lot. And thanks to everyone. And one thing I want to make a comment is while I was looking at the Northwest Australia, and I downloaded a big section of GEBCO's grid, and as a kind of provide a regional knowledge about the bathymetry pattern. And I noticed, now I understand it's a bigger task to just collect all those data to put them together, but I noticed a lot of inconsistencies, and I know this is, you are getting a huge amount of data, and a lot of those processing probably automated. It's not like when I'm working in a smaller area, I can pay attention to every piece, every line. I guess I wonder if we should have a mechanism to create a mechanism to let people to feed back to you about the observations on the errors or inconsistencies back to you, and so there's at least there's hope in the future, or some try to correct too. I think there's a lot of parameters involved there. I guess when you connect the data, you may not have all the information. So I understand that the data should be kind of objective thing, but in reality, is all data are connected by people, and when it's involved by people and the instrument, there's a chance of inconsistencies and even errors. And yeah, I just want to bring up, maybe you already have something in place already. I just should learn more about it. If quality control and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. So there is a mechanism to provide feedback through the GEBCO website. I'm not sure of the URL, but maybe someone on the team can look for that right now. There is an errata page that is maintained by the Global Center as issues are reported. When they are reported, they are sent to the regional center that is curating that data. We do make improvements to quality with every release. And you know, sometimes we get data that is a compilation and it's hard to look at all of the details of it. And so we definitely rely on feedback from the community and from also from the GEBCO committees to look at the data and provide us feedback so that we can make corrections. I will note that as part of the process of releasing the GEBCO grid, we do engage directly with 2 of those subcommittees that Geoffroy described, specifically to have more people and more eyes go through and review and identify problems in the data. And we use a map-based interface to get that feedback. Then we take that into the group and we work with the data to make those corrections. So if I know that we've done a lot of improvements of the data around Australia in the last couple of years in terms of distinguishing predicted from measured data, and also doing a better job integrating some of that measured data. And the Australian government also engages directly with us. Some of them, some of the folks working on AusSeabed are part of the GEBCO subcommittees, and they do some of the review themselves. But yeah, we certainly can't catch anything. So any information and feedback that we can get from the community of users is very, very helpful to help us create a better product that's of higher quality.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I think I would like to move us toward concluding for the day. If you have questions, feel free at any time to send us an email at our center email that will be posted in the chat in a second. Again, thank you all for your time and your attention and your patience and your participation today. We're really excited to be working with all of you so that we can together create this global map of our ocean. And we all look forward to speaking with you again in the not too distant future. So I think with that, I'll just thank you again, and we will say goodbye for now.